Good morning, Grace Place family. So glad that you're here today. I want to talk to you this morning about how sometimes God's love is just so annoying, isn't it? I want to read a passage of Scripture to you out of Luke chapter 15. If you want to turn there, you can follow along with us, or if you have your Bible app, you can pull it up and begin to look there. So Luke chapter 15 is where we're going to go with what we're talking about today. When you find your place there, if you have a Bible, I might be asking you here in a moment what page it's on. So, anybody have it yet? What page is it on over here? 1719. So if you have Jake's kind of Bible, which is a study Bible probably, it's on 1719. Anybody else have another page? 1051. Anyone else? What do you got? 1836. Over here on the Bible app. Yes, sir. It's there, okay. All right, follow along with me. This is actually the New Living Translation. If you're on the Bible app, you want to flip over there, you can read it the same way that it will be up here. Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now before you die." And so the father agreed, divided the wealth between the 2 sons, or between his sons. A few days later, his younger son packed all of his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all of his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept across or over the land, and he began to starve, and he persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods that he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. But no one gave him anything. And when finally he came to his senses, he said to himself, "At home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, 'Father, I have sinned against both you, against heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me as a hired servant.' And so he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. He was filled with compassion, love and compassion, and he ran to his son, and he embraced him, and he kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Bring a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf that we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but he is now found.' So the party began." We were in our home in Las Vegas and on a Friday evening, and one of our daughters was in a very bad mood, and so it was kind of messing up the whole environment. If you have ever been in those kind of situations. And I really have to take credit for probably starting the meltdown process, because fathers will occasionally do this, ask you an accountability question. And so I had asked the question, "Are you ready for your radio show tomorrow at 10 a.m.? She had a radio show on Kids Talk in Las Vegas every Saturday at 10 a.m. And that started the meltdown. There was obviously, she was not ready, and there was every reason why, he did it, she did it, they did it, lay blame, justify, and so on and so forth, and the meltdown was started. But her mother contributed even further when she made this request, and she said, "You need to come in here." I'd seen her in the kitchen going back and forth to the laundry room in the kitchen, her mom, and she said, "You need to come in here in the laundry room and pick up all your folded laundry and take it to your room." And that just was beyond the pale, and and she just couldn't take it and fell down on the floor and crying, and so, her mother, in an attempt to kind of comfort the situation, says, there's just a little bit, just, get it and take it to your room. And so, I kind of had disengaged and was starting to ignore the situation and was involved in some personal study time. And so I did not notice that she had collected herself up off of the floor and had walked through the kitchen and on into the laundry room and had begun that process. But what I did hear very loudly in just a few moments was this: I hate it when you lie to me. You said there were only a few things, and there are a lot of things. It was at that point that I had to put my dad pants on, and rise up and defend the situation. And so I ordered her to her room, and you're not you're disturbing the whole environment here. You better get in a better mood and get in your room and start thinking about this and spend some time in there. And so off to her room she went, heard the door slam, close, that kind of thing. And so I'm sitting there and I'm starting to feel I probably didn't handle this the best way. I didn't, contribute to being a part of the solution. I wasn't very helpful. I didn't engage her in the mess and in the process and try to bring her through this. And so after 10 minutes or so, kind of feeling guilty about how I had handled the situation, I decided I would go to her room and knock on the door, and it got unlocked, and I came in, found her sitting on her bed, facing the wall. And I put my arm around her and I said, honey, I don't always handle things right as a dad. And I said, but I want you to know we love you. We love you even when you are acting out, even when you have a bad attitude, even when you're having a bad day, when you don't do the things maybe that you're supposed to do. Our love is consistent. We always love you, and I just wanted you to know that we love you. To which she responded, why do you always have to say that? It's so annoying. And it was in that moment that I realized that my love for my daughter was not comforting to her. It was actually annoying to her. And I began to think through how that is with us and God. That we are that way, and we have been that way from the beginning, that God always wants a relationship with us. He always wants to be around us. He always wants to be involved with us. And we are, we want to control the visits. We want controlled visits with God. We want well ahead announced visitations, so that we could prepare and get ready for. We would love controlled visits with God. And that how God's love is always consistent, even when we are hard to love, even when we are difficult to love, even when we are disobedient, that God's love is always consistent towards us, and it is so annoying, isn't it? And from the beginning, we can read about man and his along this line, going into Genesis chapter 3, when man decided he would do what God told him not to do, and the very next response is, God's going to cramp my style, so when he shows up, we're not here. When he rings the doorbell, don't answer, nobody move. Shh. And God came to visit in Genesis chapter 3, verses 8 and 9, after man decided he would do what God told him not to do. When the cool evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife heard the Lord God walking about in the garden, and so they hid from the Lord God among the trees. And then the Lord called to the man, where are you? Now, I was thinking about my kids growing up, and for the most part, they really, always wanted me around and in their life. There were a few moments, prom and a few other places where I needed a less obvious presence. Driving up to the campus, if the boyfriend was out in front or something like that, I should stop way back here and let them out. And so there were those few occasions. But for the most part, my kids always wanted me around, and it was such a great thing. Hey, Dad, come on, look what I made. Hey, Dad, look what I can do. Woo. Hey, Dad, can you come and answer this question for me or help me out? Hey, Dad, can we go to the mall and spend all your money? But I digress a little bit there. But for the most part, they always wanted me in their life. And as I was thinking through that, I thought, if I missed a day, a week, a month with them, it was mostly because of me and not them. That I was busy, or I had other things going on, or I had allowed the schedule to get altered where we normally would spend time together, or I was out of town. If we missed some time together, it was generally going to be on me. It was my fault. And I could think of nothing that would be sadder to me than to have wanted to spend time with my kids and wanted to hang out with them, wanted to be around them, and them not wanting to be around me. Them saying, I just don't have any time today, Dad. I don't, can you leave me alone? You're annoying. You bug me. It would be nothing, that would hold a deeper sorrow for me than for an extended period of something like that to go on in their life between me and between them. And yet, because of our sinful nature, our default reaction to God's love is not to be comforted by His love, but to be annoyed by His love. Yes. Because God cramps our style. His unannounced visitations into our life, his checking us mentally about things that we are about to do and decisions we are about to make is so annoying to us at times. And yet, from the beginning, God made us to love us. If you don't take anything else away from our time together today, please remember, God made you to love you. There's probably no better example for that statement than the story that we just read. And now that we've had a little bit of, expounding on some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, we can go back and let's revisit the story, maybe paraphrase a little bit, and we can get a better picture of what we're talking about here today, okay? The younger son, he approaches his father. He says, Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I've given it a lot of thought, and, obviously, you're going to die one day, and you're going to leave me an inheritance, and, I've just been kind of thinking through this and working through it in my mind, what am I going to do and how am I going to get my life started? I feel like that, I hope you take this the right way, but it just kind of, in a way, it feels like that I'm just, I can't get my life started without money, and I'm not going to have money until you die. So it kind of just feels like I'm waiting for you to die. And so, as I've been thinking through, what I want to do and what I want with I'm not really clear on everything, but one thing I'm really clear on, God, our Father, is that I don't want to be here. I don't want to start my life here. I don't want to start my life on the farm. I don't want to start my life in this community. I don't want to start my life here. I feel like I want to go do something other than that. And really, Dad, the only thing that's kind of holding me back is I don't have the money to really start my life off. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, it probably doesn't matter to you because you've set aside an inheritance, and so it probably, it really doesn't matter to you, whether you give us that inheritance now, or we wait until you die because you've already kind of set some things aside. And so I was just thinking that, maybe you could give me, that inheritance right now, and I could get my life started. And I can get going in the direction that I want to go. And I won't be so stuck, but I can really get my life started. So basically, Dad, Dad, what would really be great? It would really be great if I could have your money without having you. It just would really be great. If you could see your way to, I could have your money without having you. Now, at this point, most of us who are parents realize that the father should have slapped the son, right? And nearly knocked him unconscious, but just, you want to leave him conscious enough to hear the speech afterwards, right? But that's not what happens. And in the stories we read it, the father, he does go and whatever he has to do to settle accounts and estate and get together whatever he has at that point that represents the portion that would be these young men's portion, and he gives it to his sons. And with that, when he gives them the money, the son says, well, thanks, Dad. I guess this is goodbye. And his dad says, I'm sure I could hear his dad saying, based on what we read in the text, I'm really, sorry about this choice, son. I didn't want this at all. And, I'm going to miss you every day that you're gone. And so what we read about the young son is that he heads down the road and he finds himself at a distant place, a faraway country or a distant place. And at first he's really, really happy because everything that he wanted to do, but his dad would cramp his style if he did it and would frown on those kinds of things, he gets to do now. He really gets to enjoy everything, and he's got the money to make it happen, and money will get you friends, and he's got the friends, and he's got, he can do the things that he thought he wanted to do. He can climb the ladders and go to the parties and be the person that he thought he wanted to be. And so at first, everything is really great for him, and he's very, very happy. But as it would happen, when he ran out of money, it was really a bad time because the economy was falling into desperate straits. And the same time he was running out of money, a lot of people were getting laid off, jobs were closing, there was a famine that was coming. And so the result of it is he finds himself in a really bad place really quickly when he runs out of money. And I could picture him running around, kind of passing his resume around and trying to see all of these places. Most of us have lived long enough that we have at least been through one season of bad economy. And we know what that's like when it's hard to get a job and maybe you'd have to settle for a lot less than you thought you could get. And in this case, almost no jobs existing. And he's wandering around pleading with people. And finally, he's able to find employment. And he finds it where? On the farm. The very place that he left, he's back at. And he finds employment on the farm there, and so the wage, though, is so low that he's really not even able to satisfy his own hunger. And so as we're told in the text that he begins to look at the food that they're feeding the pigs as that might look pretty good. That might be something sustainable. That might help me get through what I need to get through today to get to tomorrow. And it's in the midst of all of that he has this epiphany. And it suddenly occurs to him, wait a minute, I'm working on a farm and starving to death, and yet my dad owns a farm, and I know a lot about farm work, and I have a pretty good resume along that line. It's what got me this job in the first place. And so I'm remembering that not only does my dad have a farm, but the servants who work for my dad all had plenty to eat. They wore good clothes. They were well taken care of. I probably burned my family card. I mean, after all, I basically told my dad I wish he was dead. And, I kind of disgraced him in the community because, I was the rebellious kid that went off and everybody was talking about it behind the scenes and all of that kind of stuff. No telling what my mom and dad have really gone through, since I left. But, I know I've burnt that family card and that's probably over, but, I probably could go back and ask my dad if I could just be a servant. And so he comes up with this little speech, and he puts it together, and it reads kind of like this: Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me back as a hired hand. Now, what we understand from this, he's reciting this story, and the text tells us then he turns around and he begins to walk back down the road that he came down to get away from home, to go back home. And he's going back down the same pathway, and in his mind, he's reciting the speech. And you know how it gets when you're reciting things, you're talking about things in your mind, and you're rehearsing what's going to happen. When I get there, it's going to be, and my dad will probably be really angry, and he'll be standing, at the front door, maybe not even want to let me in. I'm going to have to be quick and good with my words. And so he's doing some wordsmithing, and he's fixing this thing around as he's rehearsing, and he's walking down the pathway. Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy to be your son. Not me, Dad. But if you could just see your way to, I can be handy, if you could see your way to allowing me to be a servant. You've seen me work in the fields. I know how to do certain things. And so if you could just let me be a servant, I'd be so happy to just come back that way. And probably as he's rehearsing this speech and he's walking down the road, he loses track of mile markers and things and exactly where he is, because he's so much in his mind building this thing up. And then the text tells us that from a long distance, his father sees him. And his father recognizes, as only a father would, his gait, his walk, the way he carries himself. And he says to himself from a long distance off, that's my son. And probably, based on what we're reading here, he probably already was alerting servants and people to come along with him, because he runs down the road to meet him and then immediately turns around and starts giving instructions. Well, he's giving instructions to who? If he meets him way down the road, he probably had some people coming with him, some of the servants following him. And we'll take at least that liberty as we're thinking through the story. But another thing that we need to identify is that was undignified in that time period for a father to run. Now, they wore robes, and so the father would have had to collect his robe up and run down the road, and that would have been embarrassing in that time. And so the father just put all of that aside. He collects his robe, he's running down to meet the son, and you can imagine the astonishment, because he's already got the speech recited and how this thing would work out, and it's already not working out that way. The dad was standing at the door angry, and he's not standing at the door angry. He's running towards him, and then he throws his arms around him, and he begins to kiss him and hug him. And all of this is just very frustrating. Have you ever been in one of those situations where you were going to go back, you made a mistake, and you were going to go back and make things right with the people around you, and you recited and rehearsed your speech, and you had it ready, and then they didn't respond the way you thought they would, and it threw you all off, didn't it? It's like, I thought they were going to be this way, and they didn't. Maybe you thought you were going to get a friendlier response from them, and you got an angry response. Or maybe you thought you were going to get an angry response, you got a friendly response. Or whatever it was, it just threw you off. So that's what happens to him. It throws him completely off. So he goes into robot mode. Father, I have sinned against both you, because heaven, and you. I am no longer worthy to be, because he rehearsed this, he remembered it, and he just starts reciting it just like a robot. In the presence of this hug, this embrace, and this love. But if you read in the text, his father doesn't even hear his speech, does he? Because he immediately turns around and he tells one servant, you need to go get his ring. The ring is the symbol that he belongs in this household. I kept it. It's in my bedroom. It's up on the dresser drawer. Go get that ring. Make sure it's polished and looks nice. Hey, go get the finest robe in our house. And bring that back. And hey, you guys, go get that calf that we've been fattening and getting ready for a feast. We're going to celebrate big, because my son, who had left us, has come home. Now, I could say that this story that we've shared is a story that is like your life story, but that would be inaccurate. Because this story is your life story. It's my life story. It's all of our stories. Everyone in this room, every person in this room that's listening, every person that watches our video on YouTube later and sees this message. This is your story. This is about you. When we said, God, what would really be great is if I could have your money without having you. God, what would really be great is if I could have all the things that you have prepared for me in this world. I want the fresh water. I want the greenery, the tree. I want the Grand Canyon. I want sex. I want art. I want Chick-fil-A. These are the things, God, that you prepared for us, and these are the things I want, God, but can you keep your distance? I just want your creation, but not the Creator. If you could just give me the money, then I don't necessarily need your influence, your presence, your guidance, your direction, that kind of thing. I know how to handle this. I can move forward with my life. I've got a plan, and I know for sure I don't want to be here. And the only difference between any of us in this room, or really any of us on this planet right now, is this single thing. Have you run out of money yet? It's the only difference between us. If you still think that you can make it, you got a few ladders to climb, a few parties that you want to still attend, a few events that you need to get to, a few accolades that you want to attach to your name, a few things that need to happen before you make full surrender and before you give your life to God, before you allow Him to love you like He wants to love you, then you haven't ran out. But if you're here this morning and you feel bankrupt because the things that you were involved in have not panned out, and you've done as many of the things as you could at your age point, at this point in your life, and you recognize that you're still empty, and there's still a spot that needs filling, and there's still a void in your life, then you're where the young man in our story was coming home. Maybe you've rehearsed your speech, and you've readied yourself to communicate to God and to explain why things have been going the way they've been going and why you've not fully surrendered your life to Him yet. And to that, God would say to you, He doesn't want to hear your speech. He just wants you to come home. He's not interested in the wordsmithing that you did to justify your behaviors. He just wants you to come home. He loves you no matter what you've done. And isn't that so annoying? Or isn't that the most beautiful thing you've ever heard? Isn't that life and hope and the brilliance of who God is? That in the midst of the brokenness, God can find us and put His arm around us and say, even when you're disobedient, even when you turn your back on the things that I've asked you to do, even when you thought you knew better than I knew, I still love you. And I still want a relationship with you. I'm inviting our worship team to come forward. In these last few weeks that we have on the road trip, our spiritual road trip and journey, we've been inviting you to open yourselves to an encounter with God, more than intellectually, to opening your heart to Him and saying, God, on your terms I come, surrendered as I am, and I'm not going to try to make a speech. I'm just going to come into your presence and invite you to love me and to care about me. Where are you on that journey? Have you ran out of money yet? Are you still some ladders you want to climb, still some things you think you want to do? Or is it time that you say, today is my day to surrender to Jesus Christ and to make Him the Lord and the leader of my life? God's love can either be so annoying or so amazing. So amazing that He cares about us and He welcomes us back. Will you stand with me this morning? The worship team is going to lead us. They're going to begin to sing and play. And as they do, I want to invite those of you who would like to come forward and just stand in God's presence. And just invite Him on your own terms. Say, God, I belong to you. I want you to love me the way that you have always designed and wanted to love me. And I want to be open to loving you back. I don't want to set a timetable and say, you're not welcome, you cramp my style. I want to just say, God, I need you right now desperately. I'm broke spiritually. I'm penniless in my faith, and I just need to have you embrace me as the Father embraced His Son. And to know that there is a future for me and a hope for me as a son and as a daughter of God. And if that's you, as they sing, I want you to come forward and just stand across the front here and embrace Jesus.